Do you ever feel like the hardest part of adulting is figuring out what to cook for dinner every single night for the rest of your life? That is exactly how I felt before I started meal prepping, and I'm here to tell you that it doesn't have to be that way. When I first started meal prepping, I was going to the gym at 6 a.m. and then teaching a full day and then private tutoring right after that. So I was usually gone from the house for about 12 hours every day, Monday through Friday. So in order to save time and our sanity, we started doing all of our grocery shopping and food prep in one day. We would usually take a couple hours on a Sunday morning to get it all done, and then we would have our food prepped and ready to go for the week, which saved us so much time in the day-to-day. Not to mention, we actually ended up saving money because we weren't throwing out unused produce at the end of every week, and it kept us from going out to eat, which was our usual go-to if we didn't have anything prepped at home. So with that, let's get into all the things I wish I knew before I started prepping. If you're new to meal prep, I hope these will help you out as well. The most important place to start is somewhere simple. I think that a lot of people, when they start meal prepping, they tend to take on too much too quickly and they easily get overwhelmed. Maybe they'll try to plan out and prepare a whole week's worth of meals, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that is quite a lot for a beginner. I personally recommend starting really small, even just doing 2 meals for 2 days, for example, and fully plan that out with your recipes, and once it's completed, see how you feel before you move on to something more advanced. My next suggestion that goes right along with that is to start with recipes that you already know and love. So a good place to start is by writing down all the recipes that you or your family loves, and actually if you have a place where you collect recipes, like in a recipe binder or a place on your computer or your phone, that is great as well because it's going to be really helpful to have them all in one place. For me, I'm old school. I like to hand write them out. Even if it's a recipe that I find online, I just like to hand write it, and that way I can make adjustments to the quantities. I like to make little notes in the margins of the recipes. So I personally like to use the notebook. I have all of my favorites in here, but of course there are a lot of digital options nowadays as well if that's something you prefer. Now it's important to note here that I personally don't feel meal prep is a good time to start trying new recipes that you've never made before. I like to save those for a weekend when I'm just making a one-off meal, because if it turns out to be something your family doesn't like, you don't want to end up with a huge quantity of it. So for something we've never tried before, I'll usually just make a smaller quantity, enough for one meal, and then if it is something we love, it gets added to the book and then we can make a larger quantity the next time. If it's not sustainable for your lifestyle, it's not going to last. As you start meal prepping, you'll start to get into a groove and really find out what works for you and your family, and not everyone's routine is gonna look the same. For example, what I actually teach in my meal prep course is that there are different styles of meal prep. For some people, they may only have time to do what I call a wash and chop, which is just washing and chopping all of your veggies to cook later on in the week, whereas other people might want those ready to go meals that they can just grab from the fridge and reheat when needed. So you may even want to try out a couple different styles and see what works best for you and your family, but the most important thing is to make sure that it is sustainable and that you can do it week after week. Do not feel like you need to prep for every single day of the week. If you're in a busy house that might have last-minute schedule changes, or maybe your family likes to eat out every single Wednesday, make sure you write that into your meal plan so that you can give yourself the flexibility to change up your dinners. Sometimes there might even be days where you just don't feel like eating what you've already prepped, and that's what I like to use the freezer for. So if I end up going out to dinner unplanned, or like if I just come home and I don't feel like eating what I've already prepped, I can pop that meal into the freezer and eat it at a later time, and as a bonus, then I have another ready to go meal in a few weeks' time. Freezer meals can come in really handy as well, so it's never a bad idea to have a couple extra in your freezer. Increasing the quantity of something you're already cooking is one of the easiest ways to start meal prepping. This is actually how I got started before I started really getting into planning. I would just double the quantity of whatever I was cooking for dinner, and that way we had leftovers that we could eat on the next night. We simply reheated them on the stove or in the microwave, and that meant 2 days worth of meals from only cooking one time. So if you have a recipe that you already know and love, you might want to start by just doubling or tripling that recipe. You can eat the leftovers later in that week, or even, like I said, pop them into the freezer and then defrost them later on in the month. This is a really good transitional tool for anyone who is thinking about meal prep but aren't sure that they want to plan out a full week's worth of meals. You can start really simply by just doubling or tripling your favorite recipe next time you cook it. So when I'm ready to start planning, here's what I like to do. Step 1, get my recipes, which for me are all in my notebook. Step 2, check my pantry, fridge, and freezer, and plan my meals based on what I already have first. If I have a lot of lentils or split peas to use up, I'll have a look through my recipes and see if I have any that use up those items. And that way, if it's one less thing to buy at the store, it can save me money too. Step 3, plan the right quantity. Now this is something that's often overlooked. I think when people usually find a recipe, they just follow it exactly as it's written. But it's important to plan the correct quantity of how much of that recipe you want. That is actually what I teach in my meal prep course. I show you exactly how to calculate your recipe so that you don't have too much or too little food, and that will also end up saving you money because you don't end up overbuying. And step 4, lastly, of course, I will go shopping. And just as another bonus tip here, when I'm making out my grocery list, I like to make it in order of the store. So for example, if at the top of the list is lettuce, and then I have a couple pantry items, and then I have apples at the bottom of the list, if I'm following this list in order as I'm walking through the store, I'm gonna end up running back and forth from the produce to the pantry and then back to produce again, which is a waste of time. So I personally like to organize my list in order of my grocery store. I put all my produce items first, and this ends up saving me so much time. I'm in and out of the grocery store a lot faster, and it also saves me from a lot of the impulse buys because I'm not wandering up and down every single aisle. I know exactly where I'm going and I just follow my list. Now, if you're thinking all of this sounds great, but maybe you need a little more guidance or you want a step-by-step framework on how to meal prep from start to finish, then I would love to have you check out the Let's Eat Plants meal prep course. I'm going to be opening the doors in just 1 week on October 12th, and this is the last time I'm going to be opening it for the rest of the year. So if you want more information or you want to make sure you're on the wait list, you can check out the links in the pinned comment or in the description box down below. I would absolutely love to have you join us and to show you how to save time and money with meal prep. And of course, if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave it in a comment down below, or you can also DM me on Instagram. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed Let's Eat Plants, and I'll see you guys next time.